We are back once again this week, here to talk to you about what to do in your untimely demise, before you get there. Nick and Mike are with me again as usual. I'm going light tonight. I'm only going to have one. I'm drinking Red's strawberry ale tonight, and then I will switch to water. Nick, what do you got?
I got the Nick Watkins famous holiday 5-pack because the sixth one is in my hand. Bud Light, Anheuser-Busch. I'm really excited for you guys to reach out to me. We're going to pop some Blue Label here and drink it up away. Mike, thanks for joining us again. What are you drinking?
I still am finishing up my Blake's multi-pack, but I'm drinking the two that I didn't drink last time, which were the Triple Jam, which is a berry, and then the Grisly Pear, which, as the name suggests, pear.
We talked last week, and I had Mike over, and he brought one of those drinks. What was it? It was like cucumber or something, raspberry or something.
That was Dave. I would not have brought
I brought the cucumber, and then I had I had the blueberry one Mike had on Tuesday.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I say. And so, that's right. So David brought it over, and I had myself a good taste of it. So it was a real big shout out to them. That was pretty delightful. So very exciting.
So one of the things people don't tend to want to think about is what happens when I die. So we're here to talk about what happens, to your family, what's left over. How do you best prepare for your death? Because let's face it, it's going to happen. You are not living forever. So,
I think Ricky Bobby put it the best way, right? So with my rate of income and the way that science technology is going, I live to be 200 years old. I don't really think that's a thing.
So first and foremost, if you're going to die and you have anything, you kind of need a will. Yeah. Lots of different ways to accomplish this. You can get online and use some cut and paste type will programs. LegalZoom's got one. Yeah, they're legal. They're okay. If you don't have a whole lot, not a big deal. You can go the old tried and true route, call up your lawyer and say, hey, I need you to draft me a will, cost you, $300-400. I had my will drafted. I was early 20s. Haven't changed it, really need to. So luckily, if you don't have a will, the one thing you want to make sure is everything you have that is an account has a beneficiary or, it's a joint account, because that way, people can get to your money. They're not allowed.
Yeah. Right, and so I say we're none of us are lawyers for a living. We actually we don't like to screw people over. So I'm just kidding for anybody that's a lawyer out there. So if you want legal wording for everything, right, go to them. We my wife and I, we have a will. It is a lined piece of paper that is notarized on the bottom. And I woke up in the middle of the night, oh gosh, I don't know, a year ago or something, because we were getting ready for vacation. And I was like, I'm about to hop on a plane and leave my kid for the first time. And so I just wrote everything kind of out and spelled it out and had it notarized real quick. So, right, it just stands for what it is. So, as David said, he hasn't updated his, but the good thing about a will is if you're still living and you're still conscious, you can change it. You have all rights to say what you want. I mean, we hear stories all the time of one kid turns to drugs and their life just goes to crap. And so, you don't want to leave them all this big chunk of money up front, and they're just going to blow it and probably end up in the same spot you are. So, right, you can set things up. Honestly, you can set things up so particular in your will to state exactly what you want. I mean, so right now, my daughter's 5, right? So it's different than David. And okay, so I have to figure out who my kid is going to. So I'd have that conversation with my friends and, or my family and be like, hey, we want this lifestyle. We want her to, and so then, hey, personally, we feel like we have to compensate those people for adding another child to their house, to their life, so they get some of the money. But honestly, all that money is my daughter's, and it's meant to be hers. And it's all written out that, she doesn't get it until she's older, and it's too, if she goes to college, she can collect some of it right away. If she chooses not to, then she doesn't get it till later on in life. And it's all spelled out like that, and it's got to be carried out that way. So, I think that's a huge thing.
Yeah, and that's, basically what you're trying to do here is look out for the people you're leaving behind. So when I was younger and Caitlin was younger, it was spelled out. She couldn't touch the money until she was 25, but she had, somebody watching over the money. So that if she needed something, she could, call that person and they could dole out money as they felt appropriate. Because, I know what I did when I was 18 and I was handed $20,000. I spent the shit out of it.
Oh, heck yeah, dude, brand new car, and then you don't remember your daddy no more.
Yeah, well, that's just it. You spend it, then you don't have the money, and you're like, oh, well, that was stupid.
Yep.
So, we do things like that when we're young. And instead, I wanted her to be taken care of. So she didn't get to, if something happened, she didn't get to just go and blow $100,000, $200,000, whatever we can end up being.
Yep.
So,
I think like with us, right? So I mean, we're both married, but we talk about it, my wife and I, and so if my wife and I pass at the same time, for some reason, we're on a motorcycle and it happens, right? Like nobody wants to think of these things, and nobody wants to think of how, but right, we see it and nobody wants to go through it, right? Nobody wants to be that person to have to put up a GoFundMe because they didn't plan for this stuff. So let's say I pass before my wife, right? My wife is on everything. My 401k, that goes to her. All my houses, it's written out that she has the choice to do it. I've talked to a really good friend of mine and was like, hey, will you help her manage until she either chooses to hire you as a manager, or until will you help her sell it if she chooses? And right, my friend was like, yeah, no big deal. Granted, he's getting his percent when it sells because he's my go-to guy. It's you have to trust that person that's going to carry these things out, and my wife's not going to be left just because I'm gone doesn't mean she doesn't have a couple other people around her to help her through it. And that's the biggest key. But so we joked about it probably on a couple episodes, right? You're always worth more dead than you are alive if you have life insurance. So but right, so all of my money goes to my wife if she's still around. If not, then it does transfer to my child. The biggest key is I don't want to pass tomorrow and have my wife be screwed. Like I shouldn't be a burden, right? I shouldn't be a burden to her. I want her to only remember the good things. For the most part. I mean, it's going to be a horrible time. And just the same, right? If my wife happens to pass somehow and I'm around, her money comes to me, and I officially get to hire a live-in maid and a paid for wife at that point. We joke about that because I'm not going to cook anything and I'm not going to clean, so I got to have somebody. So no, it's
So here's a good question for you, Nick, because I know through my job, I have somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000 worth of life insurance if I drop dead.
Yep.
Now, you're not at your old job anymore.
Correct.
So what did you do? Because I'm sure they had life insurance on you, and then you had an option to pick up some supplemental life insurance for like $1 or $2 a paycheck. So what did you do when you left? Did you do anything yet, or?
No. So I've lost that life insurance officially. So what I did was I invested younger, and my real estate investments is basically my life insurance, right? I financially set us up so that way. I mean, there's almost no guarantee. Nothing's guaranteed, but there's no possibilities my wife's not going to be able to walk away financially stable enough to get by in life for quite a long time. So and she could, if she could have that, excuse me, she could have that monthly income, like I have right now, and just her life wouldn't change. She just have one less body to feed and, serve alcohol to. Or she can, just have a big pot and then, choose what she wants in her life, right? If she wants to go travel the world and experience things without me, she can cash out everything and do that. So I always tell people I'm self-funded when it comes to life insurance. I don't have a big enough savings account, right? We talked about 3 to 6 months. I have 6 months reserve. So, I tell people, like, my wife can, she can mourn my loss for 3 months, and then, right, it's time to get on that box and start selling things off and figure out what you're going to do, because we have that, that reserve. Um, she's going to have to make some payments, and she knows all my passwords to everything. She can log in and get it taken care of. So, when it comes to life insurance, I'm the first to admit I personally do not have any. I am self-insured. So.
Well, and it's a good point, because when Dawn stopped working normal jobs, we're going to say normal jobs, and right before she got sick, I ended up taking out $100,000 term and policy on her, because if something happened, I wanted to make sure I was covered.
Yep.
So I have 50,000 on her through my job. I have that 100 that I paid for. So something happened to Dawn, I have 150,000. Now, took that out in 08, so it was for 20 years. I had what, 7 years left on that? 8 years
Yep.
left on that? So it's not going to last forever. Term insurance ends, and we're going to get into whole versus life in a little bit here, and kind of break that down for everybody. But it's one of those things where Nick has his investments, which is his life insurance policy. I have life insurance, which is my life insurance policy.
Sure.
So,
So, and this conversation kind of came up. So my brother stopped by, who is a single guy, no kids, 5 years older than me, and he's like, "Hey, man, I got my 401k, and they need a beneficiary," and he's like, "I don't know what to do," and I was like, and so the idea, like, we all have different things going on in our life. I mean, some people are married, some people are single, some people, have kids, some don't. Like, so everybody's different. So I looked at him, I was like, "It's your money. What do you want to do with it?" Right? And he's like, "I don't care." I was like, "Dude, you can take your 401k and say," he's an electrician, right? And I was like, you can donate all that money to, let's call it a trade school or something, so that way you fund a college classes for however many kids, so that they learn a trade if you're passionate about that. He's like, "Oh, I really just want my car." He's like, my brother restores cars. Yeah, so he's got a Cutlass right now and a Monty that he's doing. And he's like, "Oh, I want them finished." I was like, "Dude, you can write that. Whoever gets a little bit of money, has to finish the cars." I was like, make sure that you write that down there. Hey, I was like, if you pick my daughter who's 5, she has to finish the car with this money and give all receipts to and then she'll drive it. And he goes, "Yeah, she has to drive it over my grave too." I was like, "Dude," I was like, "You could write that. Like, my brother and I ride motorcycles, and right, you can get it so you can get your ashes put into paint. You can, I was joking with him. I was like, "Hey, take your ashes, pour them into your gas tank, so the first time she fires it up and then jets it just the one time, once she's done finishing it, it blows the motor, so that way the car, like, you went down with your finished car." I was like, "You have this choice, man. Like, he doesn't have to worry about anybody." And I have a heart to heart. It's funny because my brother and I don't have heart to hearts very often. But I was like, the only advice I can give you is make sure you pick somebody who's responsible to manage that, right? Because you want somebody who's actually going to live out exactly what you wrote down. That's the biggest key. Is if you wrote it, you want whatever it is to happen to make sure it happens, right? Most people put a lawyer to read their will, and a lawyer guarantees that, hey, this person gets this. You see it in the movies all the time. "Oh, to my daughter, you get the dog. To my wife, you get a shopping spree for $10, and then to my girlfriend, you get the whole everything." And everybody's all mad, but it's written down. It's what has to happen, So, nobody likes to think about death, but it's better if you think about it early, so that way everybody else doesn't have to think about it for you.
Well, I think one of the things you really need to look at is, who do I trust to actually, fulfill these wishes? I probably only have 2 or 3 people I would trust to, carry out whatever I'm looking for, that isn't my wife. You can shake your head no all you want, but you 2 are, the first 2 I think of. Mike because of his superior intelligence. Yes, I said it, superior intelligence. And Nick because, he just knows what to do with money. So I know that, anything that happens there, he's not going to be stupid. So find people that are important and smart and close enough to you to do the things that you want done with whatever is left over.
Listen, I think that rolls us into, right, it's called dual power of attorney, right? You want that person to, your power of attorney, right? You want that person to be able to do it. So I talk to my brother, and I love him to pieces. I do, right? He's my brother, and I will always be there for him. We fight, we do whatever. But I said, hey, don't let your mom be your power of attorney, and he's like, why? And I was like, all right. So as a father, my wife's not going to be my power of attorney necessarily, like when it comes to medical, because do you know what it's like to be the person to say, pull the plug, right? You officially are the person that killed that person. Like you made that choice. But, so like we have the conversation all the time, my wife and I and my brother, like, I was like, hey man, if you're on your deathbed, let's say you got into a motorcycle crash and you're brain dead and they just say, hey, you're going to come out of it and you're not going to do anything. You're going to be a vegetable. And I go, and he just puts a gun and he goes, and I was like, exactly. You want to pass. Like as a mother, as a father, right? Like for me to pull it on my kid, I can't say I would do it because my money would just be like, I believe it. She can get there and do it. Right. But, for him, it's like, I know that he doesn't want to live like that. So it takes somebody that really loves that person to say, hey man, it's time to go, and so, as a mother or a father, that's the hardest thing you ever want to do. So putting that into somebody else's hands who you still love and trust, I think to me, it's a better option because, right, they love you not as the person that gave birth, but as the person that, just cares about you and what you want in life.
Well, and Nick brings up good points. There's two different power of attorney. One is basically a financial power of attorney, and the other one is a medical power of attorney. So I can honestly say my medical power of attorney would be my wife. She knows if I'm a vegetable, there's no point in keeping me around. We've done it with all of our animals. Just let me go. If you have to shoot me, shoot me. I don't care because I'm not there anymore. Yeah. But I wouldn't necessarily want to throw being the financial power of attorney on her because, if I'm laid up or something and I can't make those decisions, that's hard to throw that on a spouse to say, hey, well, I know you're sitting here, worried about your husband, but here's all this shit you have to worry about. That's just not fair. I would rather, if it gets to that point, somebody else can sit there and say, yep, all these bills are paid. You don't need to worry about it. Everything's good.
Yep. And to me, that's, again, it's something, right? I would have David do, right? Because he would just, my wife is spending that time in the hospital with me, right? David has no problem going into my account, just going click, 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 sending my wife a message just saying, hey, enjoy that time that you have because, right, he shouldn't have to worry about anything else. And when you have no worry and you can be there for your family and you can be there to do those things, that's huge to us. Like all three of us you guys can see the passion out of us. We're emotional. we're passionate people. We care, man. And right there, we get the phone calls. Hey, can you come do this? Hey, and that's who we are as people. We'll drop everything to go help each other. So, right, take a look at, my sister probably doesn't watch this, but she's not the person that I would put as a financial person, right? I mean, that money would just be blown. It might barely pay off her credit card, where my mom looks at me and says, okay, hey, I trust that you'll make sure that your brother's taken care of and your sister actually gets, her money slowly. She'll come to me and say, hey, I need $600 for tires, and I'll give it to her. She'll say, I need $1,000, and I'll ask what for, and she'll go, I'm going on vacation, and I'll say, hey, that was really nice talk, so like, I'll be that guy. And so it comes to that where, where my mom, we haven't talked, I think I'm actually her medical as well. But, we joked about my sister because she'd be like, oh, she'll just pull the plug, screw it. Like, she has no care about that, which my mom is okay with at that point of like, but, but she also knows that if there's any chance that I'll be the one to actually say no instead of right, because I'll use my pocket money to make sure that it happens. So
Well, and you know, with my mom, I'm both. So,
yeah,
you know, I'm not
well, you're
going
an only
to get.
child, right?
I am,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to get into a long story here. But in 2008, my mother blew herself up. If you want to know the story, message me elsewhere. So in 2008, my mother blew herself up, and I really didn't know what to do. She kind of just called me and said, "Hey, I blew myself up. Ambulance is here. Got to go by," and that was it. So I called my wife because I didn't know what to do, and she's like, "You know what? I will handle this. You have practice tonight. Go to softball practice. It's no big thing. I will go and assess the situation. Once I know what's going on, I will let you know. You can come down." All right. So I went to practice. Mind you, I didn't really do anything at practice other than answer the phone that rang every 5 minutes because everybody wanted to know what was going on, and I knew nothing.
Yeah.
So she went and she handled everything that I really couldn't deal with at that time because I had so many other irons in the fire. And even when it was time to go down there, I went to the vehicle first to see, okay, what happened. And then I went to see my mother. So, you know, I had that. I had Dawn sitting there saying, you know what, I'm going to take care of this. Go do what you need to do. When you get here, everything will be taken care of. And it was. I got there. I didn't need to do anything other than spend time with my mother and figure out what the hell to do next.
So, you know, I think, you know, it's just, to me, it's an honor more than it is a responsibility to me, right? Right. Somebody's trusted me. So, you know, to us, right, trust is huge, and our friendships are huge to each other. So that's a big thing. And you know, our wives are a lot alike, and the aspect of like, hey, I'll go take care of this because we don't know the whole thing. I mean, um, you know, we talked about wills. You can also put things into what's called a trust, right? So basically a trust, right? It makes sure, we talked about, so that your kids can't spend all the money. You hear of these trust fund babies, right? So one person gets control of this money, and then they deal out little bits of money at a time. So that way, right? Again, an 18-year-old doesn't just get. And there's people out there with millions, right? Like we are not multi-millionaires, you know. I mean, in the tens of 20 of thousands, right, or even above. But there's people out there, right? You think of the Waltons, right? I mean, billionaires who leave their money. I mean, they leave billions. Now the kids have choices to do what they want, and so right there's people that just shell out small amounts of money, so that way, you know, we basically, you don't want to. We've all seen the lottery things. What happens to a lottery winner? They just take all that big lump sum and they buy they win $1,000,000. So they take home what, 700,000 or whatever it is, and then they go buy a $600,000 house, and then they realize they don't have money to pay taxes for 2 years, and then they go buy a Lambo or whatever the heck, you know. So their money's gone in 2 seconds. So basically, it just stops you from spending all that money. So, you know, when I buy real estate, I buy from some older people, and I can do land contracts. Other times I can't. They're like, hey, I have to cash out because this cash out is going to go into a trust, because some of it's going to go to this college. Some of it's going to go to make sure that my wife is, you know, good for the rest of her life. Some of it's going to go over here. And again, he wants to start a scholarship, and he's like, I want enough money to be in the scholarship to build every year. So that way, we talked about the fire movement. So basically, it's the exact same type of a thing in the trust, right? They put in, let's call it $100,000, and they're giving out $2,000 a year every year. That's building interest. They never lose that $100,000. So for the rest of their life, they've impacted the world, one person for the rest, you know, for eternity, right? Because every time, basically that money's going out, and it's still always there. That's a huge thing. I won a bowling scholarship as a kid. A lady set a bunch of money aside, and that's what she did. Put it in a trust, and it was the scholarship fund. And it was a huge thing for me to win that money. She was my bowling coach when I originally started. And right, so, but you know, she put that money there, so it's never going to change. If they make more, they can choose to raise the price up if they make more in the fund than they thought, right? And that's people's choice. But forever, she'll impact one youth bowler every year for eternity, and that's a huge thing. Money can go a long way. Let's say, you know, I want to talk I'm gonna, David and I, Mike, you've lost loved ones, right? I mean, I just honestly, I was driving the other day and I realized I have one grandparent alive. My wife is so blessed right now. She has all four, and that's huge. I didn't realize I was down to one. My father's father passed when he was 12. His mom passed 6 months after I was born, so I never met her. And my grandma passed almost 2 years ago now, and so that was, and my grandma was my mom, right? David, he had an aunt who loved and adored just like a mother, and she passed, and so we've all dealt with it. And it's a hard thing to deal with, but the good thing that we learn from these things is prepaid funerals, right? Um, my grandfather now, he has a he went through my grandma's funeral and he's like, I want the exact same thing. And so we knew exactly what it was going to cost. We knew everything, prepaid the money. So now everything is written in the will that says, hey, I want this exact thing when I pass. Everything's already paid for. We have no worries now, right? So none of the kids have to talk about it. Nothing. We all know exactly what to expect. It took one thing to happen, for it to trigger the next. But did Aunt Sue have a prepaid funeral?
Aunt Sue had nothing. She left it on me.
Yep.
As most things are left on me. And with her, she was adamant she did not want to be buried. Well, we didn't know what we were looking at money-wise, so I made the decision we're cremating her because I think burials are worthless and a waste of time and a waste of good space for low-income homes or whatever. Funeral to me is a funeral's fine, but a burial plot is stupid. Okay, I'm getting cremated. My wife's getting cremated. I hope to be dead long before my daughter needs to do anything, so she can figure it the hell out. My mom's getting cremated. This is just the way life is. And because Aunt Sue did not decide, yes, this is what I want, I'm paying for it, she got what I gave her, which was we did a memorial service at the house. It was more just getting together and, talking about how we loved Aunt Sue. We cremated her. I buried half the ashes at her house. I buried the other half at my house in Plainwell, and that was the end of the story. And because we went cremation, it was $900.
Right. So I doesn't matter my religion, but I grew up Catholic. Right. So my family believes in burying the whole body. I know there's other religions that you can't be missing a piece of your body like at all. You have to be buried with every part of it. So right, there's religion, so my grandparents, they have a cemetery plot right next to their parents. So we knew where my grandma was going to get buried. We knew every aspect of, hey, what she wanted. But she didn't pick out casket. She didn't pick out, all these other things. But we knew, hey, she wants to be kept whole. This is a personal part of me. My wife and I will not be buried. We are actually going to be cremated, and we're going to be turned. So first, we're gonna try to give our bodies to science, because my wife's in the medical field. Not just that, but like, we are firm believers that science, you can learn things, and if we get denied, then we're actually going to be put into cherry. You can get made into a tree.
Yep.
So my wife is actually going to be made into a sweet cherry tree, and I'm going to be turned into a sour cherry. There's two different types of cherries in this world, if people didn't know that. Two reasons. One, I'm a sour, and my wife is sweet as heck. And number two, the fun thing for all you kids out there, a sweet cherry has to be pollinated by a sour cherry to create. So forever we will always pollinate each other and bloom. So forever we will continue to pollinate the world. That was one really cool thing for us. I'm not excited to die, but I'm excited that it makes me proud that something for the rest of my life until the next George Washington comes down and chops off the cherry tree. But
so that kind of leads me into two things I kind of want to hit here. One of them is, so you've decided, hey, if medical science can use me, great. So one thing that's always been important to me is I'm an organ donor. I've seen people pass away that their family didn't know what they wanted to do and they couldn't make decisions. So instead of saying, yeah, take whatever you need, they're like, nah, we can't donate anything. If you got something in me that you can use, I don't care what it is, take it. I don't need it. I'm dead. There's nothing I can do with it anymore. You need my heart, you need my liver, but you're not going to need my liver. Use whatever is usable. Take it and have fun.
There might be an eighth that they can use and grow off of it. But, so I'll be honest, I'm not an organ donor. And it's selfish. 100% it's selfish, right? I'd rather see my body go to science for things. But the only reason I personally am not an organ donor is because I cannot say I do not want my eyes donated. I have beautiful blue eyes, and I never want the opportunity for my wife to have to look into another person's eyes and see my eyes ever again. If they would let me say, hey, don't donate my eyes, I'd be an organ donor in a minute. That's why I'm going to science instead. The only reason is because my wife should never have to look into my eyes and see it by chance ever again.
Yeah, and the other thing I really want to hit, so we talked about trust, which is great, and we talked about power of attorneys, which are great. And Nick alluded to the fact that he wouldn't want his wife to have to make the decision to pull the plug. So there's a great way to not have to stick that on anybody. Write a living will.
Yep.
Basically, your advance directives that say no heroic measures will be taken to save my life.
Yep. So you can do that. You can, right? So we hear about it when we go into the hospital. DNR, which stands for do not resuscitate. So let's say you have a heart attack and they could do CPR to save you. We know that after a stroke or a heart attack, right, you have chances that your life's not going to be the same. So you have the choice to say, hey, I don't want to take that chance, whether it's 50-50, whether it's, whatever. You can say, hey, I don't want to be resuscitated. I don't want to come back to life. I don't want the opportunity. Things change with that aspect because, here's a family story again. My aunt is a DNR, do not resuscitate. She had blood clots and it could go to her brain. When you're a DNR, you're not allowed to get oxygen. So she changed that because they're like, hey, if you just continue to breathe, we'll get this through. And she had like a 90% success rate. So at that point, the doctors asked her, and she's like, yeah, but they also had to talk to my uncle, who is her power of attorney, and say, hey, does she really want this? And when they say there's a 90% success rate of if she has oxygen, when oxygen gets into the blood, right, it thins it out. And so they're like, all right, you know what? You can change it whenever you want. So right there, always remember that, right? Figure out what you want, and things can be changed if she was coherent, she was everything. It's just a blood clot that could transfer. And when a blood clot gets into the brain, you could stroke out. So situations are everything. So figure out at what point of life, to me, if there's a 20% chance that I'm going to be fine, I don't want to take that chance. If there's a 50% chance, man, pay that bill, right? Like rack it up. I say I'm a 50-50 kind of guy, but 25, I'm really on that border. But I know 20 or less, take me off, man. Like, because trust me, I am not the guy. Like I've been to the roulette table, right, and 36% chance of hitting it. Like I'm not good at that, so I'm say if 36% was a good chance, I'd be a rich man. But or technically with 37, but I'm horrible at that. So I know I'm never gonna hit that. The 1 out of 37 spins, but 20 is basically like if a doctor is like, hey, he's got a 20% chance, my wife's like, pull it, see ya. And so think about things, where you want to be, who you want to be. We talk about my brother again, right? A single guy, and he lives his life wild and fast, right? So if he could never ride a motorcycle again, but he could talk to all of his people, he'd probably be around. But he would, he'd have a wheelchair that goes hella fast, right? Like he'd be like, look, I want that off-road thing that can climb mountains, so, but But if he couldn't do anything in life, no, he doesn't want that life. That's not a life that he wants to live. And I fully support it, right? If I'm in a wheelchair and I can still understand who my kid is, I want to be around. If I'm never gonna know who you are, or if I can't look you in the eyes and tell you I love you, like I don't want to be around for that, man. Like I don't want my kid, my wife to see me. They're gonna see me at my lowest, they're gonna see me at my highest, but I never want to not see who they are, right? If I can't watch growth in life, I don't want to be in life. That's just me. So, and I'm not talking about just blind. I'm talking about if I never comprehend it, right? So, don't think it's a blind aspect, but
So this next thing I want to hit kind of goes hand in hand. You know, our whole life is digital now. So securing your digital life is important. And in doing that, you also need some kind of master document that whoever's left can go and get into things. So, for example, my aunt passes away, it's time to do her taxes, and they need to send an email to verify the account. I don't know what her email password is. It wasn't her normal password to everything, so I can't get into the email. My mother has no idea. She ends up calling the company. It took like 2 hours to unlock the account so that we could just file taxes.
yep.
And it's something that she never would have thought about. We honestly didn't think about. But you have to at least leave everything so that people can get into whatever they need to get into, whether it's your email or your bank accounts or your health insurance, everything. I have a protected spreadsheet. It has every password anybody could need, and several that nobody will ever need.
Say that again. Say that again. What you have? You have a what?
I have a protected spreadsheet,
Which means what?
which means nobody can just break into it. Okay.
You can't just click on the spreadsheet and it pops up.
Correct.
Okay, so people that know, protected means it's usually password protected, or I mean now with technology, right? Face, finger, anything like that. So right, you can get this to where it's code protected, so that because you don't want everybody knowing your passwords in this world. That's why every job in the world. I mean, when I had a real job, it was the worst day of my freaking life every 30 days to sit here and try to think of a new password. I'm like, 2, right? And then they make it 8 digits long, and I'm like, I can't come up with 2 digits, right? Like, so, Mike, I mean, how many passwords do you have on a constant that you have to change? I mean, a lot, right? David, I mean, so, and you're in there, you're in your thing and you're updating it and trying to make sure that these passwords are your passwords, which get into things, are protected by a password, which is, it's so you guys, it really is important to, my cell phone company, right? When I call, they're like, hey, what's your PIN? My wife tried calling one time and she's like, hey, I don't know your PIN. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. And then they're like, hey, what's the, you always answer these questions like, what's your favorite food? What's your mother's maiden name? What's your favorite sports team? Which for me, everybody should know is the Tigers. Okay. So just so we're clear, I am not with these Cubs fans. No, so there's all these questions that you can ask. And so, right. But so now you think about it, right? And I want to be clear with everybody here. When you think about it, how frustrating it is, or it was for David to get into this. So not only is he mourning the loss of his aunt, now he's just pissed off because these people are disrespecting the fact that he wants to sit here and cry, or just however he wants to emotionally. It could be anger, it could be anything, right? We all go through stages of how we handle things. But like, he can't just handle it because somebody didn't leave him set up to just handle this thing. I know when my grandma passed, right? It was, all right, hey, I have to get, my grandma did everything for my grandfather, right? And now it's like, okay, hey, you have to pick your own clothes for the first time in your life, right? Like you This is called getting dressed, right? Like my wife does it. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. Every morning, and she does it for my daughter. I love my wife. But every morning we get up, we take our shower, and my clothes are sitting right here, and my daughter's clothes for school are sitting right here. She sets our clothes out. If my wife passes, like I don't know what the hell I'm gonna do. Like what I don't know what to wear today. I coordinate on certain days because, and my wife can tell when I dress myself. Hey, Caitlin.
Hi.
Everybody.
Hi, Kaylin.
David's daughter, Caitlin, right there. YouTube famous. But right. So just make it easy. Make it easy for everybody else to. It's funny because when we're alive, we always talk about, hey, Nick, if you die, what would you want? I want everybody to gather at my house. I want everybody to gather in a hall, and I want you all to chug an entire thing of a keg of beer. I want you to throw the biggest party. I want you to do things as big as Nick would do. I want you guys to go out the way Nick would go out. Like, heck yeah. And there's going to be sadness, but dude, I want you guys to go, that was the greatest party of my life, right? And it's because I died, but like, I want that, right? There better be a DJ there. There better be a pig roast. I mean, this thing better be massive, in my opinion. And I won't get it unless I write it down. And like I should write my will again that says if anybody cries, they don't get $1. But no. So, right, it should just be this. To me, it should just be this party, right? It should be. I want everybody to remember this. Like doing these Tuesdays. Yeah, I mean, I rushed home today and whatever, but like. Doing this is awesome. Like, this is great. Like, I want people to remember every good thing about me. I don't want you to remember, oh, Nick passed, right? Like, never remember that. Like, I'll be honest with you guys. Like, my grandma passing is hard for me every single year. It was hard for me. I probably called David, on her death anniversary, and it was like, hey, I'm pretty drunk. I'm going to need a ride, right? But, like, some of the best times I have, my grandma would show up to a random thing. So my grandparents don't drink. They're not big drinkers, but I've seen my grandma drink a beer a year. And so, forever, it was just like, all right, I'm going to go drink because this one's for my grandma, so like, I remember those good things. David and I met through softball and stuff like that, but like umpiring, softball, baseball has been a big part of my life. So like those things to me, I get goosebumps talking about it because it's that passion. It's that thing I want to remember. I don't want to remember that moment I was holding my grandma's hand while she's, and it's the hardest thing in the world that you'll see. So, really, the more you do now while you're alive, the better it is for everyone when you pass. And that's what this whole episode is about, is trying to teach everybody that, man, it's so much easier for every last person if you just take some steps. Before we hopped down here live, one of the first words, Mike said he was joining. Mike, why are you joining?
I need to figure all this out. I haven't done any of it yet.
Right. So, and to be honest, like as I said, when I wrote my will, it was literally I woke up out of the dead of sleep, and I will remember it for the rest of my life. I woke up out of the dead of sleep and said, wow, I need to get my crap together. Like, I need to write this down because you know what? I've talked about it, but talking doesn't mean anything unless it's written down. So it was like, hey, this, right? And so it's clear. Like, I have a fireproof safe. It's just in there, and somebody's gonna open it up and go, oh crap, we know exactly what he wants, right? Like, I mean, granted, it's gonna be chicken scratch handwriting, and people will figure it out. And oh, I think that looks like David. David gets all my money. No, so, but
I was talking to a friend the other day, and he had brought up going out and shooting because he just bought a gun. And I said, yeah, we should do that. I haven't been shooting since. I said I haven't been shooting since 2015, and he goes, "What do you mean?" Last time I shot was with Nick and my wife and my aunt.
Yeah.
And the image was vivid in my mind. You had a 40 or a 45, Nick?
I have a 45 ACP 1911.
So my aunt saw this gun, which was about 2 times bigger than she was.
Yeah.
And
35 pounds soaking wet.
decided she had to shoot it. So Nick literally got behind her like Johnny Bench with his hands out, ready to catch her in case it blew her on her ass.
Yeah.
And the picture of her standing there shooting with Nick standing behind her, that will be in my mind until I either lose my mind or drop dead.
Let's say, if this was Aunt Sue, okay, so like, let's imagine this. And she literally was bent like this. And she's supposed to go, but she was bent so far back, and I'm waiting for this thing, because I mean I'm a big guy, and that thing will give you some kick. Nope, and it's a lasting memory for me, right? We still love it every time it comes up, every time we share it, and those are the memories that we want, right? Like
Right.
those are the biggest things, and she when we say 35 pounds soaking wet, we really mean it. I gave her a 12 gauge shotgun. She couldn't lift it so high, right? She's like, no, that's good. But man, she can hold a 45, and 45 is what 11 inches long, and she's trying to manhandle this thing. Go boom! And say your wife's slow-mo, or your wife's picture where it actually has the explosion coming out of it. That's one of my favorites. And we have step-by-step of her just back bending, what a great memory. So
one of the other, we had touched on life insurance.
Yeah.
And it depends on who you talk to on whether whole is better than term or term is better than whole. And both of them have advantages and disadvantages. So I kind of wanted to get into that because, that's important. If you need to set your family up and you need insurance, you kind of got to know what you're talking about. So my aunt had whole life insurance. She was still working, so she still had insurance through her company. My mother is not working and she has a whole life insurance policy. I have one whole life insurance policy. I think it's worth $5,000. My mother took it out on me when I was a kid. She pays the premium every year. I pay no attention to it. I took the term policy out on my wife when, right before she got sick, just in case. So I kind of have a little bit of background with each one of them. Nick said his life insurance at this point is the investment properties. I assume Courtney has some kind of life insurance through work.
She does, yeah. So, that's the difference between the two of us is, right? Like, yes, my wife gets everything of the properties, but theoretically, my business is my job. So by her passing, I literally I have my job and I have no second income, or and so I don't have that. So my wife does have life insurance because, heaven forbid, she passes. Well, I have to be set up in that same way that I'm going to set her up. So she does have life insurance, right? And she has work and she has term life insurance, right? So because my investments are not fully paid and fully funded by myself, I still need to get by until that moment happens when everything is complete. So, right, we have everything set to where, hey, all right, I'm going to pay everything off in X amount of years. So we need that point to where, okay, you know what, let's cover us just in case this happens, and I'll be able to survive until I actually get that second income of paid offness. Right. So and that's the thing, like we're the same couple, we're the same everything, but me passing is the better because she just gets all this, but her passing is horrible. It would, I mean, besides losing my wife, it would devastate me, but like I would lose all that thing I'm so used to, and she pays for whatever utilities, she pays for whatever bills, and so I would have to come up with that. And now, mind you, being jobless, or I can go get a job, but then I don't have the coverage for my daughter that I had. I don't have that person watching. I have to pay for babysitting. There's so many more bills that I'm not used to, because I had that second income paying for these things. So, right. So, um, we choose term. I don't do whole life. It's usually more money. I can probably invest a lot faster than what I can get whole life for. To me, it's a scam. Everybody's favorite person, Dave Ramsey. It's a scam.
So when we look at whole life, that's one of the drawbacks to the whole life is it's way more complex. And if you're investing, you can probably do better long term than you can with a whole life policy. I have a whole life policy on Caitlin. I did the Gerber grow up plan. You can do it until they're 13. I bought it when she was 12.
Yep.
So it was $15,000 and it doubles when she hits, I don't know, 18, 25, something. I don't know.
I think it's 18 because I had it for Emerson for a year and then I canceled it.
So, well, I did the math and I'm like, okay, if something happened to her, let's say she dies when she's 80, but she has kids. I only spent about, we're going to say 10,500 because I like even numbers. Paying for the premium for this policy, it's going to pay 30, so she's still ahead about 20,000. Could I have done better in 70 years with that 20,000? Absolutely, I could have. But back then, I wanted her to be covered.
Yeah. Well, and say, I tell everybody, right? So I have a friend. Her and I were talking, and she has whole life on her kids, and she's like, "But I don't do 401k. I don't do this," and I'm like, "I'm not mad at you in any way, shape, or form. Like, you're making some type of an investment. So like, I'm not going to be mad at you people that are understanding that. Hey, like, I can't afford $20 because I put 25 a week, whatever, for my kid, blah blah blah. But like." If you can't afford to do, but you can afford, let's say, let's say you get a bonus once a year. And David, what did you pay? Like $238 or something like that, I think is what my 216.
Mine for Caitlin was 155.74.
Sure. Let's say, and so right, and that's just once a year, just a flat payment.
Yep.
And so right, and it gave you $30,000 worth of coverage. And so right, to me, I did it because, gosh, I mean, I had my daughter 5 years ago, and so, it kind of, and then I like 6 months in, I found Betterment, and I was like, I started doing math, and I was like, oh, I could totally out earn this. Like, I'll take the risk that if she passes here, I lost money, but at this point, I'll gain money. And I started the ball rolling on investment. So I got lucky in the fact that I was bringing in some type of money. But like people that aren't you and I that invest and stuff like that, like I'm never going to be mad at anybody that's like, hey, I covered my kids because you know what? I'd much rather you be able to just be like, hey, this life insurance just pays for my kid's funeral and I have time to take off X amount of months of work to mourn the loss, and that covers it, right? So like, when money buys, you can't buy time, right? But when money buys time to do the things you want, that's called success to me. Like I don't care. We could debate all you guys want, but like that's success to me. When you can choose what you want to do and how you want to do it, like whether it's mourning, whether it's doing anything, I support whole life insurance in that aspect.
Well, and when we look at some of the advantages, Nick, you hit them. So we know with whole life insurance, it's always going to pay. As long as you pay your premiums, it's always going to pay out. It's never going to expire.
And it doesn't matter what the cause is.
Right. The premium doesn't really change. It's always going to be the same. You can predict what it is. It's thought of as an asset.
Yeah.
So it also is building cash value. So you know that you own a specific thing that is going to be worth X number of dollars on a date in the future. So that's an asset.
Yep.
There are times that you can take whatever cash value you've built up and actually start paying the premiums. My mother's done that with her life insurance for, I don't know, the last 5 years. And there are obviously tax advantages. The problem is it is more expensive. So you're paying more for that whole life policy than you will a term life policy. Now,
sure. And the younger you start it, the cheaper it is. So
Correct. Caitlin's is cheap because she started young.
yep.
I'm paying less a year for hers than what I'm paying for Dawn's, but I also get, almost 3 times the coverage on Dawn's.
Dawn's his whole life.
Dawn's is term.
Term, right? So term. When we say term, right, it's usually split up between 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and then you go to whole life at that point,
Yep.
right? So, yes, it costs more, but he's covered. And so, as he said, he has 7 years, and then it expires, right? So then he's wasted some money, and he'll only get part of his money back that he invested. But if it happens, then it's horrible to say it, right? But if it happens, he wins. If it doesn't happen, he loses. But he technically wins no matter what because
It's still a win.
he has his wife, right? So, but he has that coverage. He has that stability of financial, right? Everybody says money's not everything, and it's not. Money is not everything. Your family is, but without your family, you need that money to keep going with, right? So
One of the nice things about the term policies too is you can convert it into a whole life.
you can.
It's not cheap, but you can do it. It's also very straightforward, very flexible.
Now, Mike, do you have any coverage? Do you have any coverage at work for your kids?
Yes, I've covered my kids at work.
Okay. Now, do you have any policies for your children above that?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. So, and that I say, and it all I say. Now, are you investing any money monthly for your children?
I have betterment accounts for them.
Perfect. Right. So he's taking and self-funding that financially himself. So to me, it's the exact same thing, theoretically, right? So basically you can self-fund it. So right, if you're throwing, what do you say, David? 150 a year.
Yep.
Get you 20, will get you life for as a kid. But if you throw $200 a year, let's say, and your kid passes within 10 years, you don't make that money that you would have by having the whole life. But anything past that 10 years, right, you're going to make more money and you're going to have it invested. So you're really rolling the dice on when a tragedy is going to happen. So there's nobody knows the future, right? So I could back out of my driveway, and everybody hears it. Everybody hears it all the time. You could back out of your driveway and get hit by a semi. I mean, granted, if you live in the whatever, there's no semis down side streets, but I could back out and get hit by my neighbor. I mean, there's so many millions of things that could happen in this world that we don't know. I mean, as a kid, I could have jumped off of the top of a what was the metal playgrounds at the McDonald's? What was the burger called?
Mayor McCheese.
The Hamburglar.
Hamburglar.
Yeah. So right, I could have jumped off the Hamburglar and just hit my head and passed and it would have sucked. I don't like hypotheticals. I don't, right? Because you can get into such horrific details. But guys, really, you should, if you're investing in your kids in any way, shape, or form, whether it's term, whether it's whole life, whether it's just a savings / betterment account / something, if you're investing in the aspect of it, right? We always want our kids to use the money we're investing for them, but there's a chance that we have to use it for our kids. Just the same as our spouses, our loved ones, anything like that. David, I want to touch back. You talked about you hate cemeteries and burying people. So this is a true thing. So I paid for the headstone for my grandparents, right? And I talked to my mentor in real estate, and I was like, I probably had the proudest day of my life. I had the money to pay for the headstone, and he looked at me and he goes, "That's awesome. I respect you for that, right?" And he goes, but funerals are just a waste of money. He goes, it's just an ego boost to prove to people. He goes, you could get buried in a $10,000 or $100,000 mahogany casket. You'll never see it again. He goes, it's just to make you as a person feel good. It's just to boost up, right? So when we all pass, I mean, when David passes, everybody watching, you know David just from here or personally, but it doesn't matter, right? Like what happens to him doesn't matter to 90% of you. Mike, the same thing. Me, you people either know me personally and you're like, cool. But honestly, 99% of you people will never once come visit my grave. 100% of you people will never dig my personal body up because you're like, forget that guy. You know what I'm saying? So you'll never see that casket again. You'll never see any part of it's just a small ego boost, right? Like we see these parades for people. You know, when presidents pass, you know, you watch them and they get this multi-million-dollar parade, and it's to honor the person, and that's all it is to honor the person. But honestly, it's just an ego boost for the government. It's to prove that hey, we respected this person, but it doesn't give any financial gain. It doesn't give anybody. I mean, we're all from Michigan. Gerald R. Ford, right, was from Michigan. He president. No, I've never been to his gravesite. You?
Well, I guess I kind of have because I've been to the museum, but it wasn't to see his grave. You know,
Exactly.
I walked past the museum and I saw, oh, yeah, there's where President Ford's buried, and that's pretty much the extent of it. Because, like
Yeah,
Nick says, it's not that important to me. You know, even looking at historical figures in my life that are important, I can't sit there and say, man, I gotta go visit Walter Payton's grave. No, I don't need to do that.
Yep. I say because why? You want to watch highlights of the great things he did. You want to remember all the good things. So, guys, it's really just remembering people for who they were, who they are now. I mean, so I think the biggest thing out of this week's topic is right. Just make it so everybody in this world and everybody in your life can celebrate your life instead of mourn your life. Not mourn, but pain your life and have the pains of having to deal with you being passed. I mean, none of us want to put that on people.
You bring up great points, Nick. So Dawn and I used to fight about if she really wants a funeral with a visitation.
Yep.
And I'm anti-visitation. I don't need to go look at you when you drop dead, and I really don't want you to come look at me when I drop dead because I'm dead. I honestly don't care that you're there.
I'm totally kissing your forehead, and you'll never know it.
You can do that. That's fine. But I don't want, somebody that means something to me to sit there and go, hey, the way I remember this person is lying in a casket. I remember my grandmother telling me stories that when her grandmother passed, they took pictures of her in the casket because I guess that's a thing in the Polish culture. You take pictures in the casket. This is what I was told by my great aunt's boyfriend.
Just so everybody knows, David is not full Mexican. Actually, he's zero Mexican. But so right, you didn't know he was Polish. He's actually Polish. It's a weird thing.
Polish, Irish, and Persian. But anyways, they would take pictures of the deceased in the casket, and my great aunts asked my grandmother, "Well, do you want a picture of Mama in the casket?" And she goes, "No, what the hell would I want that for?"
Yeah.
I always thought that was the strangest damn thing. I don't want to remember somebody that way.
You know what? You just brought it up to me because like I really want to be a cherry tree because my wife wants to, but like now parts of me really wants to be a piñata. So when you hit that shit, like boosh, like dude, that would be great.
See, what you do, Nick, is part of you is a cherry tree and the rest of you is the piñata.
I gotta ask my wife for this approval, but I'm totally down for that. Like it'd be creepy and awkward that like everybody has like a piece of me on them. But dude, there's not a doubt in my mind my brother would be the first one up there with like a big old baseball bat, just wham, hits a home run. Like, dude, I'm totally in for this now.
Well, see, and Caitlin knows when I pass away, I want her to sprinkle a little bit of me outside Wrigley Field, so the cops don't see her and arrest her because you're not allowed to do that.
Yep.
Take a little
I
bit,
got you.
spread it in Hawaii, and then put the rest of the house in Plainwell with all my animals, because that is the one thing I do, Barry, is my animals. Why? I don't know. I just always have.
It's cheaper. No, I fully agree. Right. So we touched on wills, we touched on trust, we touched on power of attorneys, prepaid funerals. Look into it, right? So that way it takes the guessing game out of everything. We touched on life insurance. We can
Hold
go into
that
so much
thought for a
detail.
minute. Hold that thought for a minute. I'm going to pause for a sec. All right, we're starting back up because I asked Dawn to come in for a minute. Dawn used to manage a cemetery, and she is very aware of what would happen with people that didn't set up beforehand. So can you just kind of talk a little bit about the pain that it is if you don't prepay your funerals?
So there is a difference in cost between pre-need and at-need services, both at the funeral home side and at the cemetery side. If you do pre-need services, you can actually make payments up until the time that that's done, and it locks in that price from the day that you do it. If you wait until the time that you pass away, you have to have everything paid for up front. And I know a lot of people indicate, well, I have insurance and my insurance will pay for it. Yes, it can. However, the insurance needs usually takes a while to pay out, and it can take a while to get those funds. But the funeral home, sometimes is able to, figure out what your insurance amounts will be, and they can kind of give you a loan for that amount, and then they can pay for the services at the cemetery. But it really just depends on the funeral home themselves. Not everybody's able to do that. And even if they are able to take and figure out what those amounts will be, you're still paying more than if you went and did it right now. There's two different costs. So that's definitely a good thing to do. The other thing that's really good to do is that if you know right now that you want to be cremated, you need to make sure that that's noted somewhere, whether it is by having a funeral cremation contract taken care of, or whether you have it noted in your will. Because, for example, let's just say, like in this case, my husband and I and my daughter would be the ones that would be left if David died. Well, he wouldn't have been left. I said that wrong. But his mom, me, and our daughter. I would be the next of kin because I'm his wife. However, if he didn't have a cremation contract and if we didn't agree with what was happening, technically another family member can dispute that, and then it becomes a big fight. And funeral homes and cemeteries are unable to physically do a cremation for you because you're physically doing something to the body. I had seen several families where they were not able to do a cremation for that individual because, well, so-and-so told me that's what they wanted, but they had not indicated that as their wishes anywhere. So the funeral home, or us, in that case, the cemetery, because we had a crematorium, we were not able to do a cremation for the individual because two other family members were arguing and they just would not get on the same page. So that becomes a heartache for the family where, one family member says that's what they want. The other family member says, well, they don't know that, so they don't feel comfortable. Or maybe that's their own wishes and they're not for the side of cremation. So it just becomes a lot of heartache. There is a lot of advantages to taking care of your needs as much as you can. I know it's something nobody wants to think about, but it really is important both for price and just for the comfort of when you pass away. Your family has so much that they're dealing with already as it is. The last thing they need to be dealing with is all of this business stuff.
So let me ask you, right? So you now all of a sudden we have a professional here. So you worked for a cemetery.
I was a family service counselor at a cemetery. Yes.
This is huge. Okay, so now you're saying I lock in a price. So we talked about I bought my grandma's headstone. I could have gotten it cheaper if I would have bought it. If I would have bought it years ago, or I could. So now, do we charge interest on our payments?
It really depends on the cemetery that you work with and or the funeral home. But when we did pre-need services, we came up with here's what your locked in price would be for everything if you were to buy those things today, and then they just make payments. There was no interest on our
So-
particular plans.
Can you give me, Mike, and the viewers an example? So, I mean, like, what kind of numbers are we talking about? So
A lot.
let's use my grandma. Okay, so she passed. We paid 10,000, and plus I paid 3,500 for a headstone for 2. I mean, right? Like, your face is telling me that. So now, okay. So we did it all when she passed. Now, if I would have prepaid, or my grandfather would have prepaid. I mean, how much are we talking here? How much are we? What is this savings besides emotional, financially? What's the savings?
So the 10,000, was that for the funeral arrangements, like the casket, the service itself? What did that 10,000 for?
Yep. Let's just call it everything. Every part of the casket, the funeral, the hosting, the 2 visitations, or the 1, whatever it was. The luncheon, all that. So, like, I mean, if I would have prepaid for all that, so my grandfather has a prepaid. I don't know what the heck that cost anymore, because he said, I want to do the same thing Grandma did. How much are we saving?
Well, some of that is relative, depending on when it is that you die versus when you bought it. Because of course, if you buy it now and you die 5 years from now, those prices are going to be a lot different. But the nice thing about pre-needed services are they're good for, well, there's still that 30-day, because you don't want to come in and lie to them, and like if you know that you're terminal. But once you've survived 30 days past your contract of your pre-need services, there is probably anywhere from, let's talk the headstone. You said it was $3,500. I could have sold you the granite, the base, and the bronze, depending on what standard size you were going for, probably for $2,200. If you were going to go, if you were going to go monument or bench, a bench pre-need was probably $6,000 to $8,000, and I could have sold you a pre-need one at $3,000 to $4,000. There's huge differences between doing it pre-need and at need. Some of it is because of the fact that you're kind of buying into a program that you don't need right now, so they don't have to rush it. They don't have to get it done. They don't have to do all these things right now, but you're giving them money for the one day. And it is it's just, there's a lot of advantage to it. We had families come in where mom and dad had done pre-need services 20 years prior to the mom and dad passing, or mom or dad, because they didn't die at the same time necessarily. And we would compare, like, hey, this is what mom and dad said 20 years ago, and their service is 100% taken care of. Here's what it would have cost you today.
That's a 33% discount, basically.
Yeah, so there's huge differences.
And now, okay, so now, and you talked about payments. So, right, so let's say I locked you in for so I paid 35. Granted, I paid 37, but let's say I paid 35. You said you can get me for 22. If I make payments on that 22, how much interest do I pay on that? If I don't use a credit card, if I just pay with you guys, how much does that cost me?
We didn't do interest. That's what it was for $22. And you had we did 1 or 2 year contracts. It really just depended on what it was that you could do, but they were 0 interest. It was just basically you're making your payments every month.
So everybody watching, right? So this is huge. Like, we have literally professional that's actually dealt with this. Like, you guys, if you don't plan to die tomorrow, and you plan to die later in life, like, if you know what you want, if you know all this, write your will, write your living will, like, write it all out, prepay for all of this, because you're going to get a 33% discount. I can't invest for 33% gain. I've done flips, whatever, but, like, dude, 33% is huge money. We're a financial podcast. This is what we do. 33%, 0. So that is huge. Mm-hmm. That is so, and because, trust me, because me being the person I am, I called a bunch of tombstone places trying to figure out if I can get exactly what I wanted, and I couldn't, because when my grandma passed, they're like, hey, we have to get it in before it freezes and stuff like that. So, right, things you should know if you're in the upper half of the U.S. where it freezes, the ground freezes, they can't put tombstones out. Yeah,
they probably did a temporary marker.
We got it in right beforehand
Okay.
because what was it? Almost 2 years ago. It lasted pretty long for a thaw. So we were fortunate at that. But no, that's awesome. I didn't know that. Like, so, like, my wife and I, honestly, I'll look into prepaid of buying my cherry tree way ahead of time because, I mean, and my piñata, I don't know what I want yet. Like, I'll probably say, like, because right now, what is it, like, My Little Pony's huge, and my daughter's into LOLs, but, like, when the time comes, I'm gonna be like, look, I'm gonna need this piñata, whatever is, like, really popular, and people hit. Let's be honest. All right, Anheuser-Busch, if you guys sponsor us, I promise you I'll put 1/5 of my ashes in a Bud Light piñata, and 1/5 of my body is going to go all over the place. All right, so this is a promise. I'm officially making this a thing. So without asking my wife. So, no, that prepaid is that much cheaper. Guys, I had no clue. Honestly,
yeah.
I'm
Both
so
on the
much
funeral
to-
end, both on the funeral home end and on the cemetery end. If you can
So,
either lock in
so-
both of them or one or the other.
So now you've dealt with casket prices. So I don't know what we paid for casket, but so now let's say, so how, I mean, we're getting 33% on a casket discount for paying it up front. Because I know Costco sells the kiss casket, which everybody wants. I mean, run out and get. Honestly, I want 5% of my body to go in a kiss casket and then, like, push it out to the ocean. Dude, I'm splitting my body up into way too many fifths. But this is gonna be great, dude. I'm gonna be all over the world.
When you're dead, they kind of have you over a barrel here. They can do anything they want money-wise because you're not going to just sit there and hang on to a body.
Well,
yeah, and you're emotionally attached to it, so you make emotional decisions, which is huge. So honestly, everybody watching, like, I know we talked about life insurance and that's huge, and we talked about wills, but, like, I really think prepaid services is a huge thing to start thinking about. And again, it's funny because you two, right? So Dawn wants to have an open casket, and she wants a visitation. David wants, like,
I'm not, yeah, I wanted to, but that's not his wishes, and I'll respect what he wants, but it doesn't make me happy. But we've had the talk.
I told her before, do whatever you want. It's just not my deal.
Right.
Well, the funny thing is like, when David dies first, you still get to change and you get to pick whatever you want. So Caitlin has to, like, so, and everybody, I mean, even though they're different, she still gets to pick what she wants. And as David said, it's whatever makes her happy. I mean, that's what a wife and husband are, is happy wife, right? I mean, no, it's happy spouses. We really need to come together. My wife and I chose cherry trees. We talked about that. It's huge. But wow, prepaid services, 33% discount just by prepaying. And
that,
now, mind you, that's without prices going up. David, what's that word for prices going up?
Inflation?
Inflation, yeah. So right, so that's without inflation. Like, back in the day, it cost $100 to bury somebody. You could rent a backhoe for $5. Now it costs you 500. So,
Well,
like,
and imagine
so
if your grandma had paid for this, 40 years ago.
yeah, that's crazy.
What a huge savings it would have been. It would have been like $2,000.
Well, and oftentimes, and I can't speak for every cemetery because, of course, I only managed one, but the opening and closing costs at our cemetery on the weekend were significantly higher than if they did it during the week. Not that you can predict when you're going to die.
Everybody die on a Tuesday, so that way they can have it, like, right. So if you could pick your death date, just no. So
and the opening and closing costs for the ground, like after 3, were different than if they were earlier in the day. But
really,
oh yeah.
Weekends are more expensive than
costs
weekdays.
were $500 just to open the ground if it was a casket burial. Except for if it was on the weekend, it was $750. It jumped $250 just because it's after 3 or the weekend. The nice thing is that those prepaid services, if Dad had prepaid, everything, it didn't matter when they did it because we had to honor it.
No. So, like, yeah, let's be honest. So I know personally, I'm gonna walk to my mom after this conversation. I'm gonna walk. I'm gonna call my mom and I'm gonna say, hey, look, we need to have a conversation because this needs to happen. Like, we have this conversation a little bit, and I know kind of what she wants done, but to prepay for it now, that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
David, I mean, you're you have your mom. I mean, are you gonna have this conversation with her? I mean, granted, you have the wife that knows.
She really took care of everything back when my grandma
So it's already
passed.
done.
Yeah.
Benson?
She prepaid grandmas, she prepaid shitheads, and then she took care of her own.
Yeah, say by shithead he means his daddy. But
No, when I
Grandfather. But we
no,
don't
not
talk
my
about-
grandfather. We talk about the asshole my grandmother married.
yeah. So and then Benson, now I mean with this knowledge of 33%, like are you at all thinking of prepaying for anything? For yourself or
Yeah, I'll prepay for my cremation.
which dude, like so it's funny. Okay, so here's a thing. So I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan, just outside. Okay, cremation here is David said, Aunt Sue
$9.50.
cost 1,000. What's that?
$9.50.
$950. My wife and I just went an hour and a half up north, a town called Newago area, and you see billboards, and it says basic cremation starting at $1,250. So like, right, prices around. I mean, because there's so much less population, they don't get as much service of dead people. The prices are higher. But like, man, these prices are going up. And how much was a cremation? You worked there how long ago, Dawn?
Yeah, it was a while ago. It's been quite a
Do
while.
you know what
But I still
cremation
keep in
prices?
contact with the lady that's there now, and we still discuss prices here and there.
Do you know how much cremation was back in the day?
We did full body for $650, so it's gone up.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, like, would you work there 10, 20 years ago?
17 or so.
17.
So almost 20 years, and we've gone up. Oh gosh, almost. I mean, if you go to New, that's 50%. That's 50% in the 20 years. So if you could save 50%, plus you're saving 33% on prepaid, like you guys, like this is a huge thing that we just came into on a financial thing. This is huge.
Well, the other thing is that a lot of times, because of course, when you've lost somebody, you're making emotional decisions. You're not necessarily making financial, good, smart decisions.
Oh,
Right
sure.
now, even though nobody wants to have the talk about, what happens when they die, and they push it to the side, and like, we'll talk about that one day. The easier, the faster you can have that hard decision now, you can make those decisions, and you can make educated opinions. Where when somebody dies, they come in and they're like emotional and they're making all these, I just want to do what's best, and they end up spending so much more even just for that reason alone. Because they want to take care of that, they want to show their love by making sure they do the best. Whereas if everything's taken care of and all they have to do is maybe figure out like a color scheme or a time or like the small things, then they're not making emotional decisions that way too.
Yeah, no, we talked about that because I say it's literally just self-pride at that point, to boost your own personal ego. Nobody sees it at the time. Nobody sees it 90%. But like when you look at it, like again, for David and I to pass, it cost us $1,000. For Gerald R. Ford to pass, it cost a couple $1,000,000. So granted, you have the money and you're proving that you have the money. That's completely fine. But like the same amount of people cared about you when you passed as they do when you didn't pass. I mean, we Princess Diana, we seen it on live TV. I remember being a kid. We talk about it, but it's not a thing that has changed my life in any way, shape, or form. So that's awesome to know. So prepaid, guys, really, that's a huge thing for all of us to learn. That's huge.
So that, and
I
really can't stress enough that if you know that you want to be cremated, the faster that you have that, in writing somewhere. I saw so many families fighting and arguing, and at the end of the day, the cemetery and or funeral home, they can't physically do a cremation unless everybody agrees or unless there's a cremation contract. Because let's just say I wanted to be cremated, but David was against it. If I have something in writing, it doesn't matter what David's thoughts are. But if we've had the talk and then say, somebody else steps in, be it my daughter or whatever, now I'm getting buried, and that wasn't my wishes.
Well, so right, exactly. So David wants to be cremated, and you. So now David's is written down. Like you're pro burial, pro casket, pro getting buried, right? And David's not. So now you can't fight that because it's written down that says
Right.
David has to be cremated. That's a big thing because, and we do see it, right? Granted, David's an only child and stuff like that, but right, we have to see that type of stuff is like the and I see it even in my not my family, but like my mom and her when my grandma passed, like the kids are like, oh, blah blah blah, and I'm like, stop fighting, stop caring. Like honestly, it just comes to the point of like, shut up, I'll just pay for it because I'm done with it, right? Like I want you people to enjoy your mother, or even when my mom passes, like my sister has no say in it because it's gonna be written out like, hey, this is exactly what I'm gonna hand us. I should be able to hand a paper that says this is exactly it. I'm gonna show up and I'm gonna be in a full like Dumb and Dumber suit, right? Like bright orange. Like here you go. Like this is what mom wanted. So no, that's great to know. That is. I think honestly, Courtney and I are gonna look into that a heck of a lot more. So.
Yeah, nobody wants to have that talk, but it's very important, both emotionally and financially.
For sure.
Yeah, that's why I called Dawn, and I thought that would be a little nice.
Did you talk about organ donation as well?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So I thought she could add some nice insight there as far as pre-need and at-need goes.
Oh, dude, financially, like that is huge for every one of our listeners. I mean, it took a little bit longer to get to, but like, guys, that's probably the biggest key right there. I'm not gonna lie to you, like that is on a financial thing. Like, have that conversation with your parents if they're older, even when they're younger. Like, Benson, start writing it down because man, like prepay, like if you can make that payment now, I mean, work with these companies and be like, hey, I'm not looking to die, but you know what? Let's start making these payments. I mean, I'm all about this. This is huge. So, all right.
Time to wrap it up, I guess.
As always, like, subscribe, share. Skip forward to the last little bit, which you won't see that until you get to the last little bit. But I say, Anheuser-Busch, thanks for the holiday 5-pack. We're down to 1. I appreciate it. I can't wait to get put into Bud Light Pinata and hit it all over the place. It's great having this conversation. It sucks, but it's got to happen.
I'm going to thank Reds, who is owned by Miller Coors. Miller Coors, if you'd like to sponsor us, we are more than happy to take that.
If they sponsor us, I'll drink Miller. I'm not going to lie.
Go.
I mean, Anheuser-Busch, like, I hope you guys sponsor us first, but
whoever wants to sponsor us, we'll drink it, even if it's an IPA.
Fact.
So we'll be back
Benson,
next week. Figure out what we're going to talk about. Mike, you got any last words for everybody?
Not really.
Okay.
I've been listening mostly.
Good man.
Well, hopefully you picked up some good stuff here. And
I did.
good. And Nick, go ahead with your like, subscribe.
Oh, say it. I already did it, but we'll do it again.
Do it again.
Like, subscribe, share. It's located in the corner. One of them looks like a bell. And we all like to hear a bell ring, so put that thing there so that way you get pop-ups that say, hey, Nick and David are talking. You guys need to listen. Okay, this is a big thing for us. So I really appreciate this. This was as bad of an episode as it was. It was a very fun episode and very informative episode. I really we just want to care about people, and we want to care about them in the best way. So we want you to care. We want you to care for your loved ones. So.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys next week.